How does our emunah, our faith, our connection to Hashem, relate to our relationships generally? David HaMelech famously said, "Vani kirvas Elokim li tov." The closeness that I have with Hashem is for me good. How does that express itself? There's a beautiful window into that in one of the central stories of our Parsha. When Yosef, at the climax of the story, in the beginning of our Parsha, reveals his identity to his brothers, he said, "Ani Yosef ha'od avichai." I'm Yosef, is my father still alive? All the Meforshim, all the commentaries wonder, what kind of a question is that? He had just had a full-throated appeal from Yehuda about sending back Binyamin because their father was still alive, but that life would be jeopardized if they showed up without Binyamin being with them. So everything that led to this moment said that his father was still alive. Why is Yosef asking, Ha'od avichai, is my father still alive? It's a classic question with many classic and beautiful answers. One answer, which jumps out really from the Chumash Rashi, and which is found sort of in the Pirush of the Panim Yafos, the Sefer Panim Yafos from the author of the Haflah, is as follows. You know that later, when the brothers go back up, to Canaan, to Yaakov Avinu, and they tell him that Yosef is still alive, the pasuk says, "V'techi ruach Yaakov aviyim." The spirit of Yaakov lived; it came alive. Simple pshat is that it had said previously that when they first told him, "Vayafag libo," his heart went out, his heart stopped, he was shocked, and now they slowly spoke to him and brought him back to life. But Rashi cites what the Targum says, that "V'techi ruach Yaakov aviyim" means that the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu rested upon Yaakov Avinu. That Yaakov Avinu, during those years, those 22 years, when he was separated from Yosef, during those years, nistalko imenu shechina, he was sad, he was lonely, and he felt not only that he missed Yosef, but he felt abandoned by Hashem. To lose his favorite son, to not have mitaso shlema, to not have all of his children remaining part of Klal Yisrael, part of the world, part of the community. Yaakov Avinu felt abandoned and separated from Hashem. And so he lost the connection to Hashem. He lost Hashras Hashchina with that atzvus, with that sadness and loneliness. Now that he heard that Yosef was still alive, Vatchiruach Yaakov Avim, he not only was physically alive, but he felt reconnected to Hashem. He realized that Hashem, in fact, hadn't abandoned him, that Hashem had been with him there all the time. When Yosef said, "Ani Yosef ha'od avichai," I am Yosef, is my father still alive, that should be translated the same way it's translated later, "Vatchiruach Yaakov avim." Yosef knew that his father was biologically alive. That was the whole thrust of the plea of Yehuda about them sending back Binyamin. But what he didn't know was whether Yaakov's spirit was still alive, where Yaakov still held on to any kind of hope, any kind of connection, any sense still of the presence of Hashem in his life. That was the question which Yosef was asking. And in truth, that was what the pasuk records later, that when Yaakov found out that Yosef was there, the glimmer, the little bit, so to speak, of spirit that was left within him came back to full, blazing life. Vatchi ruach Yaakov aviem. He was again able to reconnect to the presence of Hashem. I think this also lends insight to something which we have a little bit later, when Yaakov actually meets Yosef in Mitzrayim. And the verse famously says that he hugged him, he kissed him. Rashi notes that only Yosef, this way at least Rashi translates it, that only Yosef was hugging Yaakov, but Yaakov wasn't hugging back. And he wasn't hugging back because he was reading the Kriya Shema. That's what Rashi brings from Chazal. Strange at this point in time to read the Shema. And there are all kinds of discussions and explanations about this in the Mefarshim as well. Some would say that Yaakov was Moser Nefesh, he felt love for his son, but he wanted to transcend that by expressing the love for Hashem. But in light of this, in light of what we saw before, we can understand it wasn't really a Mesiras Nefesh. Yes, Yaakov was reunited with Yosef, and that was a big thing. It was a big thing. But there's a bigger darkness that enveloped him when he lost Yosef. He missed his precious son, but he also missed feeling like Hashem was in his life. He missed feeling that he was living in a world with meaning. The dejection, the sadness was so overwhelming. He didn't feel the presence of Hashem. When Yosef came back to him, so he felt Yosef again. But then he realized as well the feeling of the presence of meaning, of the presence of Hashem, of the feeling of purpose in his existence, in everything which he experienced. It wasn't a Mesiras Nefesh, it wasn't a great high religious act to say, okay, forget the fact that I love that Yosef's back, I'm saying Shema, I feel Hashem. That's not a Mesiras Nefesh. That's basic. It's basic for a person to then readjust and to say, wow, there is a God. There is meaning to life. There's real meaning to everything which I have gone through, which everything that I have experienced and which I continue to experience. That's truly bringing Yaakov back to life, back to a life of meaning. That's the Kriyas Shema of Yaakov Avinu, even at that moment. We must recognize the interplay between the relationships which we have with each other, the strength, the sense of meaning that gives us. One who's connected to man has a much easier time feeling connected to God, feeling connected to Hashem. The role we play for each other in relationship that creates a sense of faithfulness and connection that surrounds us. Yes, that connects us to Hashem as well. And that's an incredible gift that we are able to give one another.